Welcome to Cyber Dialogues, brought to you by Palo Alto Networks. In this series, we examine the latest trends in enterprise cyber risk and discuss strategies for how you can help your organization rise to meet the cybersecurity challenge. My name is Brad Howarth. On today's show, I'll be talking to Simon Green, President for Palo Alto Networks for Asia Pacific and Japan, about how CFOs and CISOs are coming together to fight against cybercrime. Simon, welcome to the program.
Hey, Brad. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Simon, why should CFOs take the time to learn more about cyber strategies?
Well, I think that if you think about the issues that the CFOs are facing today, Brad, they're worried about obviously the financial implications to the organization. They own the budgets, they control the budgets. Cyber is typically becoming a big line item in the IT spend. They worry about the compliance implications, and cyber runs right through those compliance implications, where the data is stored, how the data is protected, how ultimately the risk of the organization is being protected as well. And they're worried about, the external threat of cyber actors coming at their organization, and what does that mean to them and their ability to report to the street. If they're a public company, that is a very, very heightened sense of responsibility for the CFO today. And so, understanding how cyber is deployed, understanding the intersections of those deployments around risk, compliance, and protecting the reputation of the organization, and then ultimately leaving them as the owner of the financial budgets in a position to be able to forecast, whether it's to the street, the boards of directors, the management of the organization.
So, is there any real difference between business risk and cyber risk?
I think the lines are being blurred now, quite frankly, Brad. I think, cyber risk is becoming ultimately business risk. How that is being, measured or quantified, whether it's, in the boards of directors, risk registers, or whether that's at the CEO table. I don't think that any one of the executives today, whether it's the CFO or the CEO, would be saying, oh, well, that's business risk, and we put a different lens on that to what cyber risk is. I think the challenge with the cyber risk question is that people are working tirelessly to try and understand what the risk actually is. Is it adversaries coming at them with AI? Is it that they haven't deployed cyber technologies correctly? Is that creating risk? I think ultimately, once they understand cyber risk, I think it comes back to it is business risk.
What questions should CFOs be asking their cyber teams?
If you go back to what I said earlier about the sort of the three thematics there, or the three things that the CFO is thinking about, what is the existential threat to my organization? And if we understand, or we have some view of what that potentially is, then the questions that they would be turning to their CISOs, their CIOs, and saying, if we know where potential threats are coming from, or if we know what we look like from the outside in, then are we deploying the right technologies to stop those threats? And I don't think any CISO or CIO could stand up in front of the CFO and say, we've spent the perfect amount of money, we're perfectly deployed, and you don't have to worry about it. I think, most are in a position of, questioning when something is going to happen, not if. So, again, back to the CFO, I need to understand what those risks are, what those threats are, and then I need to know that the CIO and the CISO are stepping in with the right technologies and the right capabilities to be able to defend against those potential threats.
How should finance leaders approach the investment planning process for cybersecurity?
I get asked often by CIOs and sometimes CFOs, how much is enough? It has to start with, here's what I look like today. Here's what I look like from an outside in view today. And what am I going to do to plug any potential gaps that we already see? And is that going to keep us in a position of being able to defend the organization, over the next, couple of quarters as we continue to evolve our cyber defense strategy? So, there's a lot to unpack here from a CFO point of view, but I think it has to start with coming back to the things that they care about. What are the external risks? What are the compliance issues? And then how do I apply the right amount of money associated with those things so I can continue to do my job, which is report the financial, success of this organization.
On the flip side, then, how should CISOs and their teams go about preparing for these conversations with their CFO?
I would start with what is on the CFO's mind? What do they care about? And am I addressing those things coming into this budget cycle? The CISOs need to understand, implications of downtime, when there is a potential breach of the organization. Even before that, understanding mean time to detect, and mean time to respond. If you can't detect quickly, therefore you can't respond quickly, therefore you're potentially in a position where you've got downtime in the organization. Now, having that conversation with a CFO, if your business is down, you're not serving customers, you are not preparing, the administrative requirements of the organization, all of those things can be translated back into money. So I think, mean time to detect, mean time to respond, what does downtime mean in the context of IT can be very, very quickly translated back to, the financial impact for a CFO. And I think if the teams are coming together and collaborating on, budget and deployment of technologies, there should be a clear understanding in that room of what those IT metrics are and how they translate to CFO metrics around profitability and cash flow and revenue and those sort of things.
So, how does this translate then in a situation such as a data breach?
Often CISOs you'll hear talk about, we lost 10 gigabytes of data or 10 gigabytes of data was exfiltrated from the organization. And, well, that's an interesting metric inside the IT portion of the business. Talking to the CFO about that their lens on that is going to be something very, different. They're going to say, well, what was in the 10 gigabytes of data that was exfiltrated? Was there 100,000 customer records? If there's 100,000 customer records, was there privacy data associated with that? Because then that translates into there are potential fines associated with that data being taken out of the organization. And therefore that affects, downstream, that affects profitability, their control of the budgets, a whole raft of different things that are probably not being considered.
Simon, what benefits have you seen come from closer relations between cyber and finance teams?
The CFO who is well briefed and well understands what the impacts are of, spending that money on cyber, will move much, much faster than they do today. But if you, as an IT organization or a CIO team, are collaborating well and educating the CFO well on how integrated approaches to technology can deliver better outcomes, particularly in an environment where the adversary is moving very, very fast. There's a lot of skill shortages around. Therefore, getting to an integrated approach, or what we would state as platformization, I think in a collaborative environment between those two parts of the organization, the CFO will bring that, acute financial lens to say, well, why are we spending money on that piece of technology over there that's only delivering that? Can we get a better outcome if we use an integrated approach, and move to a platform approach? They've done that in other parts of their organization. And so as it relates to cyber, I think an educated CFO can see where the financial benefits come from in moving to a platform and therefore help the IT teams move away from, point technologies and that they can't leverage the ultimate capabilities from. So I think, you come back to it, education, wins over in this environment. And then when you bring, the excellence of a CFO that to interrogate, why we're spending money on different things, we can help both sides of the organization move to a platform outcome.
So, what are the emerging trends then in cyber that CFOs need to keep a watch on?
Well, I think the trend, Brad, that's probably driving the cyber implications right now is artificial intelligence, and there's an incredible amount of enthusiasm inside enterprises, big or small, around what benefits they can get from AI, and the opportunity is incredible, but the risk is also just as incredible. What are you doing to protect AI? And so, I think as a CFO, is looking out and embracing the enthusiasm for these things. They've got to make sure that the cyber lens stays over the top of whether it's AI or mobility or cloud or the general digitization of the organization. So, I don't think there's a particular cyber thing that they need to go and learn or focus on. they need to understand what the implications are of cyber, of unlocking these new powers that they're bringing into the organization.
Simon Green, thank you so much for joining us.
Brad, it's a pleasure being here.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. Join us again on Cyber Dialogues, brought to you by Palo Alto Networks, as we continue to explore the ever-changing landscape in cybersecurity across Asia Pacific and Japan.